Welcome to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast, your guide to future tech trends and innovation in a language you understand. Now, over to your host, Neil Hughes.
Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. I've got some great news for everyone listening today. I've just heard that this podcast has been invited to join Spotify, so this is a great thing, because it should make it much easier for listeners that do not frequent the world of iTunes or TuneIn Radio to find our tech community and join us in sharing these inspirational tech stories from all over the world every day of the week. In today's episode, I wanted to tackle the big difference between our lifestyle at home and in business. Because consumers today care about who they buy from and where their products are coming from, making it more important than ever for companies to provide transparency around the sourcing of goods and the services that they offer. So I invited Alex Atzberger, president of SAP Ariba, onto the show today, so he can talk about how companies are responding to the customer demand for more visibility. As the president of the world's largest B2B e-commerce network, Alex will also talk first-hand, candidly, about the demands the buyers and suppliers on the Ariba network are seeing from their customers and also the steps that they're taking to meet these requests. So buckle up and hold on tight, because it's time for me to beam your ears all the way to New York to speak with Alex Atzberger, president of SAP Ariba. So a big warm welcome to the show, Alex. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, Neil. I appreciate it. I'm Alex Berg. I'm the president for SAP Ariba. This means I'm responsible for all aspects of the world's largest business-to-business network, as well as on the world's leading procurement cloud platform, where we have over 15 million users who use our cloud-based solution to make purchases, collaborate with suppliers, and drive a compliant as well as an easy process across the company. My personal background is I've been in the tech industry for about 20 years. You know, my dad actually had a business that was all about import-export trade. So I feel I've taken his analog business and am now responsible for the same in the digital age. And, live in New York City, German from background. So I really enjoy global business and how to connect businesses across the world.
And you really are doing just that. I mean, 15 million users is incredible on its own. And my understanding is that SAP Ariba makes B2B commerce as easy as consumer commerce, helping companies thrive in this digital economy. And there's so many businesses trying to do this now, especially with the digital transformation of almost everything. But can you offer an overview for the listeners of what problems you solve with SAP Ariba, and also what makes it unique from all the other solutions out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So SAP Ariba has a simple mission, which is to make procurement awesome. And for us, making procurement awesome means that a company can have a compliant process, that a company can have a process where users really love using the solution. And a lot of this is, to your point, influenced obviously by the consumer economy, by the way we go on shopping sites, be it Amazon or others, to actually have a purchasing experience that invites us to actually participate in the economy. And when you step back on the business, oftentimes employees feel that when they walk inside a company, it feels like they're 30 years backwards in terms of the experience. But obviously businesses need to have policies. They need to actually ensure that spend is under control. They need to drive spend to the right suppliers. So that's where B2B technology is so awesome, because you can actually think about how do you solve the problem from a consumer mindset, but how do you actually ensure that it's also strong enough to support the business. So we call that consumer simple, business strong. And when I look at making procurement awesome, there's the aspect of the purchasing experience, but then there's also about how you can actually drive more spend to suppliers, for instance, that are diverse, how you can actually influence the supply chain. Today, over 65% of a typical company's value delivered to an end consumer actually comes from its ecosystem of suppliers. So managing your supplier base actually is a very strategic asset. And I believe that procurement has gotten a reputation for being policy-driven only, for only being cost-focused. And today I see CPOs and procurement organizations that actually drive the corporate goals of the company. So when that happens, procurement really becomes awesome.
It's so true in what you're saying there, because it really does feel like we've got these tremendous expectations as consumers now. We've got all this great tech in our home, and then we go into the business world or in a corporate business environment, and it just seems that, like you said, everything seems 30 years behind. And it is interesting how we live these two lives parallel with each other, but the rise of customer expectation and simplicity of everything does seem to be changing the game now. It also seems that there is an increase in customer demand for more visibility. I mean, is that something that you've noticed at SAP, and how are you addressing it?
Yeah, so at SAP, we have a mission and vision to make the world run better and improve people's lives.
Yeah.
And this is becoming really, really important because on the one hand, companies recognize that doing good means also that you can do better. Which means actually, sustainability topics that, your consumers care about can actually drive your results. So that's one aspect. But the other aspect, obviously, is that you want to be a place that attracts and retains the best employees, which oftentimes relates directly to actually providing a workplace where people feel that they are making a difference. And so when it comes to the technologies we provide and how we think about solving some of the core issues, it's no longer just about creating transparency. That's absolutely one aspect, but also being able to take action. So as we think about the supply chains, for instance, and in my role at SAP Ariba, I gave our CEO, Bill McDermott, my commitment that I would ensure that Ariba becomes a role model in the company of actually driving procurement with purpose. And what that actually means is, how can we show to anybody who spends anything in a company what the impact is on the supply chain? Are they spending money with a diverse supplier? Are they spending money with an ethically operating supplier? And so many times, this message really resonates with our customers, but it also resonates with the employees. And it gives me a lot of hope and confidence that we are really in a world where technology can do better and can make the world a better place.
Now, I also read about the new SAP Ariba Supplier Risk, which is a solution that leverages both big data and machine learning technologies to automatically analyse potential risk scenarios. I mean, is that something that you can expand on as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about risk in a supply chain, it's truly a big data problem, because ultimately there's plenty of information available, both structured and unstructured, both in your transactional systems as well as obviously out on the web, where you can actually analyze events, you can analyze news, you can analyze information about suppliers. The challenge is today, most of this work happens manually, most of this work happens through a Google search, and ultimately there's structures missing that when one company thinks about their suppliers, they think about it in a portal approach, where they basically look at their supplier base and then go through them one by one. But some of the customers we work with have tens of thousands of suppliers. So Neil, it becomes impossible for those companies to really manage the risk of every individual supplier. So what have we done? We have thought about this rather as an incremental technical solution, as what's exponential. And in today's world, Neil, what's exponential is networks. If you think about Uber, if you think about Airbnb, why are they scaling so fast? It's because there's a network approach. You put your property on Airbnb, everybody else can see it. That's how you create a network effect. The same is with the supplier information. So rather than trying to collect supplier information one company at a time and make it available only for one company, one buying entity at a time, we are building a network. So if a supplier provides their information once inside the networks, thousands of companies can now benefit from this information. And so every other company that joins the network actually creates more insight. So and the same applies to risk. So imagine the risk information. If you are a supplier and you want to gain new business, you want to provide your information once about your certifications. If you're a woman-owned business, how much business you do with diverse suppliers. If there's forced labor in your supply chain, you provide this information once and the entire network benefits.
Now, I mentioned a few moments ago that we are living in that age of simplification where everyone just expects everything to be as easy and seamless as possible. And our expectation level, rightly or wrongly, is to grab a cab, restaurant, a table at a restaurant, a hotel room and a Netflix movie, all within a few swipes of our smartphone. And procurement and supply chain technology has traditionally been, I think people consider it as clunky, rigid or unintuitive. But I've got to ask, how are you addressing this? Or do you think you are showing clients you are already doing that and changing through these new products?
This was one of my absolute priorities when I took over the business 3 years ago, was really to change the user experience paradigm, but not just to put a nice UI on our existing products, because we always had a very feature-rich, very configurable solution. But what it really meant was kind of like rethinking the experience from the beginning to end. And what that means is that our customers, basically, to your previous point, had a very simple request, which was, we want one place to buy. If I buy a service, if I buy a widget, if I buy, a marketing service, I want to go to the same place to start the purchase. It can be catalog items. It can be, statement of works. It needs to come through one interface that makes it easy for me to find the right process and the right way to buy. And it needs to be walk-up simple. I don't want training. No company wants to do training anymore. No user is engaging in training anymore. So it needs to be embedded in the process that it's so simple to use as a tool. So what we did was we created something we would call guided buying. And the notion is that you're really guiding a user through the right channel of purchase, getting them to the right supplier. And one way I sometimes describe this a little bit jokingly, Neil, is I call it freedom without choice. What it means is you give people the simplest way to do business, but the simplest way is the right way to do business. And if technology provides this through the user experience, everything else becomes embedded in it, and it actually drives the results that the business expects.
It really does. And we are increasingly seeing leading companies unifying procurement operations now. I mean, is that something that you're seeing too? And also, what other trends are you noticing at SAP Ariba?
Yeah, so we see absolutely a unification of systems. I mean, what happens, for instance, you mentioned risk before. A lot of companies have risk solutions. These risk solutions typically sit on silos, and then you try to connect them to, let's say, your procure-to-pay process. And this happens everywhere. And there are many different examples of siloed applications. Now, this becomes harder and harder to manage because organizations want to be agile. Maybe 1 year they work very centrally, the next year they decentralize. So your systems need to be able to actually handle those sort of business changes. And if they are decentralized and disparate, you don't take advantage of data. You have many interruptions in the process. And every interface that you manage is a potential risk. Every interface is a cost to the company. So we absolutely see, and this is something that differentiates SAP Ariba, that we really look at an end-to-end source-to-pay process. The second part that we obviously see is that we're really rethinking that business process. So why, for instance, do you really need people involved in order to ensure that you have a three-way match between your order receipt, your purchase order, and your invoice? If a system can actually do it, automate it, make it touchless. And so we have companies that have nearly achieved 100% touchless commerce. That's fantastic for those companies. And once you do this, it's kind of like in your personal life. Once you do bill pay automatically and so on, and you do it all electronically, you're not waiting for the bill to come in the mail anymore. So it's amazing that these things still haven't happened, but they are happening now in a very fast pace.
It really is amazing. And another thing I find amazing is the emerging markets that we're seeing now. And I read a great story about the digital transformation accelerating in India at the moment and how businesses are actually turning to SAP's holistic ecosystem to try and stay ahead of the market. I mean, is that something that you can expand on?
Absolutely. Look, I've been 12 years with SAP. I'm extremely proud of the way the company has evolved, both through acquisitions, but also through internal development. One of the key developments we have is obviously with the SAP HANA database. We have reimagined what ERP looks like. We call that S4HANA. And we have built a whole set of solutions around machine learning, blockchain, etc., that we call SAP Leonardo. Now, the power of this is that, I feel very blessed running an Ariba business within SAP because I can leverage the tools and the capabilities of SAP and obviously work within one organization on actually taking advantage of all that great technology. I call this the power of and. And so when you look at an emerging market like India, for instance, and building up an ecosystem, or if you think about the investments SAP has made in China, all of those are things that we are leveraging within SAP Ariba. So let's say, for instance, an S4HANA customer, which is our new ERP solution, and it's really the digital core of the company, they want to transform the business. Oftentimes, SAP Ariba is part of that journey because, number one, we are fully integrated and natively part of the solution. But the other part is oftentimes procurement actually drives a lot of the business case to actually then allow the company to actually put in the new S4HANA system. And the same goes for SAP Leonardo on the machine learning side. There's a lot of data, as we talked about, for instance, in risk in supplier risk management. One way we're actually analyzing the data and doing the semantic searches is actually leveraging SAP Leonardo. So business becomes a lot more intelligent, a lot more connected, and SAP just provides a tremendous platform. And just to put this in numbers, Neil, when SAP acquired Ariba in 2012, about 80 to 90% of the business was North America based. Today, it's less than 50%. And so as we look at technology adoption today, as we look at cloud adoption today, it is truly global. And it gives us an opportunity to build the moat compared to our competition, which is oftentimes very, very US focused.
Now, something that many people listening won't be aware of is that SAP have also made considerable headway on accelerating diversity. So I've got to ask Alex, is there any way that you can tell me about what SAP Ariba's position is on diversity and also how you're looking to accelerate it within your company too?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I think this is something where we really benefit from the focus of SAP and the drive that we have. But I think the first important thing to notice about diversity is that diversity is obviously great for the business. I personally have a background of living in different markets. I live in New York City, which I think is the most diverse city in the world. And I think it's diversity of thought that makes companies great in terms of getting different perspectives. And so it's far away from being an HR priority. It really is ultimately about the business and about the competitive advantage that you want to drive. And I see it with, the generational diversity we have, for instance, within SAP. We have 5 generations of employees inside the company. I see it in terms of gender diversity. I see it in terms of diversity relative to people's background. For instance, we have a program about autism at work that I'm extremely proud of. This was something that started out of a job posting that was done in Germany for 2 or 3 roles on hiring people on the autistic spectrum. And we received over 1,800 applications for those 3 jobs. Yeah. And today we have a commitment from the company by 2020 to have 1% of our workforce be on the autistic spectrum. Why? Not because it's just the right thing to do. It's also really good for the business because people on the autistic spectrum drive enormous value for the company in a lot of different functions today, because they are highly specialized and can do an incredible job on the task that they do. And so that's one part. Then, of course, on gender diversity, we set a goal to have 25% of women in leadership by the end of the year. We actually passed this goal early. And I think there's no letting up in terms of continue to drive gender diversity in the business. I personally am sharing the Business Women's Network at SAP. This is an organization of over 10,000 participants within SAP that was really a grassroots effort to actually make gender diversity and promote women in business within SAP. And the topics there really are about how do you ensure also as a manager that you obviously look at the merit of a position, but that you also take a real interest in terms of how can you drive a more diverse workforce inside the company. And then finally, I would say, Neil, while this is all things that we do internally, now within SAP Ariba, we have a very special opportunity to actually promote diversity, and not just within the business, but also for our customers and their supplier base. And this is really where supplier diversity comes in. So, for instance, we were working with one of the largest life sciences companies in the world that has made a public commitment to diversity in the supplier base. One of the key focus areas is women-owned businesses. Now, how do you actually drive more spend with women-owned businesses is actually to gamify it inside your procurement application. So do you, for instance, know within a company what your diversity goal is and how much you want to spend with diverse suppliers? How can you make that visible during the procurement process? And how can you then, for instance, gamify that certain departments compete with other departments in order to drive more spend with diverse suppliers? So there's some really cool stuff that we are doing on that. And I'm very, very excited to live the mission here, not just in terms of what we do internally, but also to really help, billions and trillions of spend shift to more diverse suppliers.
It really does seem that you've got so many cool things going on there, but what's next for SAP Ariba? Is there anything else that you can share with us today?
So what's next for SAP Ariba? I think, first of all, we have a tremendous momentum in the marketplace. We have now been for a couple of quarters, the fastest growing cloud asset within SAP. And so we see obviously a lot of growth and momentum. But I think what's really next is to say, how can we further scale the concept of the network? I'm a big believer that, we are facing some exponential challenges in the world. Companies face exponential challenges relative to forced labor, relative to poverty levels, relative to environmental challenges in the world. And so we formed a partnership with the United Nations around helping really create decent work in the supply chain. And when I think about being able to do this, I think about the fact that the network really is, again, an exponential idea. So what I would love to see is obviously that suppliers maintain their own data in the network, that we really create the participation that really changes behaviors on both sides and therefore really drives a better and more sustainable planet. On the other hand, when I think about the technology part, I think we are obviously at an incredible inflection point with machine learning, with blockchain. And as the world's largest business network, we are obviously starting to leverage these technologies inside our products. And I think it will fundamentally, again, change what companies will be able to do. And I think it will really, again, increase the value of procurement inside the organization. So I always tell my team, I think we have great days right now, but I think the best days are ahead of us.
Fantastic. Well, before I let you go, can I just ask you to remind the listeners of where they can keep up to date with the latest developments at SAP Ariba, and also how they can contact a member of your team if they have any questions about our conversation today?
Absolutely. So first of all, check us out at sapariba.com. That's certainly where you can give the latest on our products and our solutions. Follow us obviously on Twitter and on LinkedIn, the usual sites. And you can look me up on LinkedIn, and I will direct you to the right people on the team.
Well, a huge thank you for coming on the show today. I really appreciate you taking the time, because I do realise that the business world and our personal lives are very different, but you seem to be addressing that. And one of the things I hear from a lot of businesses and a lot of CEOs is that they need to make it easier for people to do business with them, and you're addressing that too. But I think the big quote of our conversation there was when you said diversity of thought is what makes businesses great. And I really do think you hit the nail on the head there. So a big thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me, Neil. Appreciate it.
There were so many great takeaways from today's episode for me. I mean, I enjoyed SAP Ariba's take on supplier risk with a solution that leverages both big data and machine learning technologies to automatically analyse those potential risk scenarios, whether they be forced labour to conflict materials or alerting companies to the areas that might be posing problems, all so they can be addressed and mitigated, of course. But like I said in the show, the corporate world really does need to catch up with our rising expectations as consumers, because everybody now wants to make it easier to do business and collaborate, no matter which side of that fence you find yourself sitting on. And the fact that SAP Ariba are addressing these issues looks incredibly promising. And of course, when Alex referred to the importance of diversity of thought, and for it being what makes businesses great, I couldn't agree more. Let's be honest, you don't get anywhere with 10 guys in a meeting room all on the exact same wavelength, with the exact same belief system, outlook or worldview. But as always, let me know your feedback and your thoughts and insights, expertise by tweeting me at Neil C. Hughes or send me an email over to techblogwriter@outlook.com. If it's the first time you've ever emailed or contacted a podcast host or somebody on the radio, why not throw in the line, I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. I used to love that line back in the day. Now, as I'm recording 30 shows a month now, I've got to admit that my hosting fees are a little on the expensive side, so I'm beginning to investigate a tasteful way to sponsor the show. So again, let me know your thoughts and expertise. I need to lean on you guys a little for this one, because I really do class this as our show. I mean, after all, we spend a fair bit of time together every day with you listening to me in your ears. But it's time for me to walk away from the microphone now and say a big thank you for everyone listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Blog Writer Podcast. Until next time, remember, technology is best when it brings people together.